Payroll is the most exciting space in the business environment that I know. And there's really no role better in an organization to really feel this spirit of the people that drive organizations. We touch all aspects of people's lives. We are the bridge between all of the other functions. Really understand your role. Really understand where your guardrails are in payroll, and just understand your role. What's the purpose of payroll in your organization? Because that's really going to be key to your success. Every organization is going to look at payroll differently, and it's really important that you get that.
Welcome to the Payroll Podcast, the show that explores the latest insights and innovations in the world of payroll. Today's episode of the Payroll Podcast is sponsored by Deel. Now take a moment to consider the following pre-show scenario. Imagine you had to visit 6 different houses just to cook your dinner. One place has the pots and the pans, another has the stove, another has the food. You get the idea. Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, the reality is most global businesses operate exactly the same way, using 6 different tools and platforms just to pay their global workforce. But now there's one platform offering truly simple, truly global payroll, and that's today's sponsor. That's Deel. That's Deel. And Deel's fully managed global payroll makes it possible to pay your entire team in over 100 countries and in over 200 currencies, all in one place. So whether you're an enterprise company, a small business, or something in between, Deel is built to meet your unique business needs. With in-house customer success managers, local payroll experts, and more, Deel's fully managed global payroll eliminates third-party handovers and instead provides unmatched compliance and flexibility. In fact, they'll even help you track and flag the latest changes in payroll regulations before they even become an issue. And with 24/7 monitoring and best-in-class security protocols, your sensitive data is always protected. So are you ready to change your global payroll system? If you are, click the link in the show notes to book your demo with Deel today. Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. My name is Nick Day. I'm CEO at JGA Recruitment Group. We're specialist payroll recruiters. And joining us on the Payroll Podcast today is Deborah Piacitelli, who is Global Payroll Director at Zimmer Biomet, where she's responsible for leading their global payroll transformation. However, today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. Today we're going to be talking about an article that we've co-written together for Payroll eMagazine Global Payroll, and it's all focused on elevating global payroll with precision role charters and job descriptions. You may be wondering, what does that all mean? What even is a role charter? Why do we need to really delve into job description? Does it matter? We will say, yes, it does, and the article will certainly explain more when it comes out. But we thought it'd be a really good idea to connect today on a podcast to bring the article to life. Now, for those of you not familiar with Deborah, let me just say she is an absolute global pro when it comes to payroll. She's also a real pro when it comes to talent acquisition strategies in relation to payroll recruitment. And that's really important because I see it from one side of the lens, which is the external agency side, and Debbie sees it from the internal lens, trying to recruit top talent. And she's done that throughout her entire career. I would actually say her career is testament to her deep expertise in international payroll practices. She's got exceptional leadership capabilities. She's guided teams towards achieving accuracy and excellence. And she has a really proactive approach to enhancing processes and, more importantly, in my opinion, fostering talent development, which has significantly contributed to advancing not just the people that she's worked with in her teams, but I would argue the payroll profession globally as a whole. So without further ado, let's dive into exploring the critical importance of role charters, job descriptions, and how they can really optimize payroll department operations. Welcome, Deborah, to the Payroll Podcast. How are you feeling today?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nick, for that wonderful introduction. I feel so humbled. Really nice.
Well, you're an absolute fan. I had a huge amount of fun writing this with you. We really did co-write it. We shared it back and forth. We've taken some hopefully some inspiration from each other and getting it out there. We're going to release this episode as the article gets published, so we're looking forward to that as well. Before we jump into the detail, I'm going to start with a question I ask all of my guests, which is this: what does the word payroll mean to you?
So payroll is the most exciting space in the business environment that I know. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've had payroll organizations under me for many different types of companies, for sitting on the HR side of the house, the finance side of the house, and there's really no role better in an organization to really feel this spirit of the people that drive organizations. We touch all aspects of people's lives. We are the buck stops here team that makes sure that everything that leaves the organization to be processed for payroll, that our pay slips get posted accurately, that our taxes are paid on time, that our benefits are provided to employees. All of that sits with the payroll team. We are the bridge between all
Absolutely.
of the other functions, right? So the word that comes
We
to mind
are.
is really exciting, and it doesn't matter which decade or which year you're in, there's always something new, or which country you're in, there's always something new in payroll.
Absolutely right. And I love the fact you used the word bridge, because actually the article, for those that may have already read it or when it does come out, we've had a bit of a maritime play with it, haven't we? We've tried to make it a little bit more relatable, because it can be quite a dry subject talking about
Mm-hmm.
job descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
It can be quite a dry subject talking about role charters. And hopefully we've brought that to life a little bit. And I think the way you've used bridge there is an absolute excellent way of kind of just pitching where payroll is at the moment. It's, we need to collaborate with our stakeholders and other functions. But without payroll, everything stops. People don't work if they don't get paid, and we've got to get that right. Which links, of course, to the importance of having, therefore, a clear job description to make sure we're getting the right people in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this, Debbie. Why do you think it's really important we do have clear job descriptions in relation to operational payroll efficiency, which is the side that you see, and, of course, regulatory compliance?
Yeah, you really need to have a roadmap for your organization. Needs to have a roadmap to understand, which road do I take for which function, right? So for payroll, your roadmap or your charter or your GPS needs to point you in the direction. Am I more HR focused in this role, or am I more finance focused in this role? So when I'm looking for a payroll specialist, I'm really looking at the organization and how payroll fits into that organization. Some organizations really focus more on controls. Some focus more on data. Some focus more on, the interaction with employees and that user experience, and really that white glove service for employees. So you really have to build your payroll specialist role based on the needs of the organization, and be a little bit of a chameleon as a payroll leader. You have to really try to figure out how do we fit? How do we want our payroll team to show up in this organization based on the organization, right?
Yeah, absolutely critical. And I see probably more than anybody in the world that I work in, I get flooded with job descriptions from HR professionals and talent acquisition teams. And it's interesting because when I see a job description, because I've done it for so long, I don't really even take that much time really now to get into it. I kind of know what a good payroll person looks like. I know what the standard responsibilities will be. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I'm complacent. But what I think is really interesting is we've written our article to talk about how a job description on its own probably isn't enough. We need a role charter as well. And I know you do as well from your experience, a lot of people out there, particularly in the HR world or talent acquisition world, don't really know what a role charter even is. So I'll give a very quick definition of how I understand it, but I'd love you to bring it to life if that's okay, Debbie. So what I would understand is a job description tells us what we need to do. It labels the responsibilities. There may be some soft skills in there, but ultimately it is, we need to process a payroll for 500 employees on a monthly basis in very simple terms. Why I think a role charter is so important, and it kind of echoes the things you were talking about just a moment ago in terms of the culture and the dynamics and where we're trying to get to. A role charter talks about why we need to do it. So what are the nuances? What are the cultural values? What are the things that actually make this role important? Not just what we've got to do, but why. And of course, if you're Simon Sinek lovers out there, the why is the all-important element of anything that we do. So Debbie, I wonder if you could bring that to life from a payroll context.
Yeah, so exactly, Nick. What we need to understand is, how is this, like I said, how is this role going to show up in the organization? Is this role going to be looking at payroll activities across multiple jurisdictions? Is it going to be a regional scope, a global scope? And when I think about the what types of work the role supports, am I supporting a vendor? Am I supporting a system internally? Am I supporting a team of people, that are sitting in a different function? When I think of payroll, I think of an orchestra, and I think of what type of orchestra am I trying to meld into here, right? Am I a Baroque orchestra or am I a classical orchestra? Because you're going to need different sets of musicians for these different types of orchestras. And so you have to define that landscape in a role charter. How does this payroll specialist fit within the organization? Is it more accounting based? Is it more transactional based? Is it more subject matter expert based? And I like to kind of create like a one paragraph that's kind of summarizes the purpose of this role in this organization. And it will change company to company, right? And then within that charter,
absolutely. I love the fact. No, go on.
Within that charter, you might have some job description details, but not necessarily this role will be responsible for X, Y, and Z, and semi-annually, monthly, bi-weekly, whatever. That may be inside the supporting information for the role, but fundamentally we want a higher level charter of this. When I show up in this organization in payroll, this is my world. This is what my world will look like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it clarifies the nuance. It absolutely makes sense. I think what I loved as well is you mentioned payroll as an orchestra, and I feel like you've given me a really free plug here, so I'm going to mention it. I wrote an article, I kid you not, about 6 months ago called "Payroll as a Composer," which links to how they do. I'll have to send it. I'll just say it over to Debbie separately, but certainly I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But I absolutely have the same vision because it's exactly how I see payroll as well. So I'm glad you mentioned that. But I think it's important. You've made the distinction really clear there, and I think that's important in the world of payroll anyway, because clarity breeds efficiency, and we talk about that in the article. If we know who owns each task, then it can prevent costly errors. Mm-hmm. It prevents missteps. It prevents overlaps. And I think we talk about it providing. You mentioned it in the article. It was your idea, which kind of gave us the idea to take the maritime angle on it. As you said, it provides an organization with the GPS coordinates to allow us to navigate the complex world of payroll more efficiently. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I think of when I think about a role charter. Is I think about it as a map, and just like, where's my North Star? So that first paragraph in the charter is really the North Star. Ultimately, what is my purpose for being here? And we can also think about it as a ship, right? If I'm in the payroll organization, or if I'm in the organization being a ship, and a company that I worked for used this analogy quite a bit, and really just payroll is connected with everyone in the organization. And this role, while there may be specific tasks to complete in this role, or a role to, in a ship, right? One thing we all know is that if anybody pokes a hole in that ship and it starts poking holes below the waterline, it's going to sink the ship. And so when I think about a role charter, it's really important to put some guardrails around, this is how this role is going to show up in the organization, and its fundamental purpose, and making sure that, like I said earlier, the buck stops here. Payroll's responsible for ensuring that waterline isn't messed, that no one's poking too many holes in that waterline. So while it may be transactional, the actual job description may include very transactional items, like take a left here, take a right here, go around the corner. We also have that, here's the end state, right? And you can maybe take a left turn instead of a right turn, but just know that this is the direction you're moving in. This is your North Star. This is where you're going. And listening to everybody around you while you're doing that. And so the role charter also includes things like, how relational you are with others, right? How you see yourself in this ship. Are you at the helm? Are you in the back? Or where are you in this ship? And how do you see yourself impacting those around you? Like not using.
I love that. I think also
like not using your blinkers when you're taking a left turn.
Well, yeah, absolutely right. I think what I love as well is if we think about the captain of a ship, then just to put this into people's minds and listening on audio, or trying to contextualize it a little bit. If I was to write a job description for the captain of a ship, you'd write the responsibilities. You'll need to use these instruments. You need to be able to navigate a path, and you need to do the kind of day-to-day things you'd expect of a captain of a ship. But if we think about how payroll now is so entrenched in the employee experience, if the it never used to be, but it is now, we've got a responsibility to look after our consumers, which are our employees, to make sure they feel their onboarding process is correct, so that they are looked after, that they can access the information they need, so they stay with that organization, that we can retain that staff. If we get it wrong, we're in trouble. And I think by the same token, if you're doing a captain job description for a ship, it might have the responsibilities about how to use the instruments. But actually, the role charter part is the scope of that responsibility is to make sure all the people on the ship get from A to B safely, that they feel welcomed on arrival, that they want to return at the end of it, that your responsibility is broader than the job description. And that could be related to your reporting relationships, your primary responsibilities, which is the care of the people on the ship, which may or may not be that detailed in a job description because you're looking for technical competence.
Exactly.
And I think that's the same with payroll now, and that's where it's shifted. So from your perspective, because we do talk about this in the article as well, but how do you think role charters and job descriptions can really help improve, I guess, the ability to attract top talent, to really market the appreciation of payroll skills and to improve a recruitment process?
Yeah, great question. Because when I come to an organization and I look at a job, I always ask, can I see the job descriptions for payroll? Let me look at what the job description says. And then I look at that and I say, well, does that actually reflect the spirit of what we're asking them to do, right? And that's when I look to the role charter, because the role charter gives more of that context and that spirit and landscape that's much bigger than the actual, these are your expectations. You're going to do these, 10 things, and you have to have skills and competencies for these to support that. But the role charter is much more around the feel and the spirit of the role in my mind. And again, whether it's you're talking about the ship analogy or the orchestra analogy, we're all trained in, if you're a musician, classical musician, you're usually trained to be a soloist. Everyone goes to school to be a soloist. Well, not everyone can be a soloist, right? So you have to show up in an orchestra, and your role is not to play your part spectacularly. Your role is to play your part well in the context of everyone else, right? That's kind of how I think of a role charter is, yes, we expect you to do these, 12 things very well, precisely every single time, but you need to do it within this context, within this role of looking at the user experience, not just the employee experience, but the manager's experience, the leader's experience, your vendor partner experiences, right? And that's what the role charter does, is it kind of brings that flavor into the payroll specialist role, or into any role. And if I am working with a recruiter or an agency looking for payroll, I spend more time on how that person, I'm looking for the type of person that can show up in this way and that cares about showing up in this way, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. And I'm gonna try to create a picture for our listeners, because I do this for our clients. I think it's really important, and I know I do it commercially. It makes sense. So full transparency here, but actually, it's how a job description and role charter can make you feel. And we don't often think that way when we're recruiting. So if we often take a job description, I deal with talent acquisition specialists, US side and UK side on a regular basis. And I'll say to them, well, what's your EVP, your employer value proposition for this role? I want to know a little bit more about the culture of the team, how it feels, and actually, how well is payroll respected? Now, let's put this into context. If you're listening to this right now or watching this on YouTube, and let's say you're a payroll manager and you're looking for a new position. You've got one recruiter that gives you a job description with a salary or whatever else on there and says, would you like to apply? You have exactly the same job description, but within the context of this one, either at the start, the end, and you said you always mentioned that you put a paragraph in yourself, David, which I think is wonderful. The other job description says something along the lines of this: We're looking for a payroll manager who can be part of the heartbeat of our organization. We respect payroll more, as much as any other function in this business. We want it to have a real strategic role in our organizational objective, or the achievement of our organization. I'm making this up as I go along.
Mm-hmm.
The achievement of our organizational objectives. We value payroll. We were willing to invest in that organization because we know an effective payroll function will have a broad and wide impact on the overall success of our business. There's no one more important than anybody else. We work together, we're collaborative, and blah, 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 blah. The reason I highlight that is if I'm in a position where I'm looking for a position, do I want to go with the employer that tells me on the page where I fit into the wider
Mm-hmm.
organization and how I will be valued?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I go for the one that just lists process payroll for 500 people?
Mm-hmm.
For me, they are totally different things. And one, it builds interest intrinsically. It stops people from applying for a job and actually builds into, that's a job I really want to work. That's the kind of organization I really want to be part of. That's the vision that I'm brought into. And I think it can have a huge impact on the success of a talent acquisition process. And yet, actually, it's such a simple, nuanced shift. I know it's something you've been doing for a long time, which is kind of how we got into this conversation. I don't know, what's the kind of thing you might put on one of your charters, Debbie, just to bring it to life from an internal perspective for those listening?
You basically just said it. I want to attract the kind of person who understands that nuance. That's the kind of person I want in my organization. Obviously I want somebody who's, has a drive and is interested in excellence and interested in compliance and interested in showcasing their skills around, controls and audit readiness and, process accuracy and process improvements and things like that. But more than that, I want somebody who recognizes the difference between the organization who just gives you the list and the organization that gives you the paragraph that you have to read and feel and understand, because that is the candidate that is going to make a difference in your organization and on your team. That's the candidate, regardless of whether they're an extrovert, an introvert, if they're, a process-oriented person, doesn't matter. They will recognize that difference in that role, looking at that role chart and say, this is the organization that I want to join. Doesn't matter what the mission of the organization is or whatever we say we are, right? There's a nuance that comes with the first look into an organization, and that is your talent acquisition team that gives you that inside look. If that first connection is that level of sensitivity to the person versus the tasks, right? You're going to attract the right candidates. In my mind.
Yeah, absolutely right. I guess a question I have, and I come across this from a different lens, a different perspective than you would internally, Debbie. And I understand that talent acquisition has a really challenging role to play because they've almost got to be a jack of all trades, master of none. If you work in talent acquisition, you're looking after multiple stakeholders. Mm-hmm. You might need to recruit a procurement person 1 minute, a payroll person the next, an HR person, a finance person, a marketing person. And it's impossible to have the breadth of network or the industry nuanced expertise across so many different disciplines. And of course, you're managing internal stakeholders, and you may be one of those if you need a payroll person in your team at all different times, and everyone wants those people now. So there's a lot of pressure in talent acquisition. However, the problem with that, of course, is if you are not an expert, it's hard for them to understand what the nuance would be for a payroll function and what the kind of person would need to be. And still, even within talent acquisition, they will see payroll as people used to look at payroll 5 years ago. It's a transactional department. They just pay people. That's all that matters. And of course, it isn't. So for the payroll managers, the payroll hiring managers, professionals listening to this, what advice would you give in terms of helping educate and improve and I guess build on the relationships they have with internal talent acquisition teams to improve the overall ability to attract better talent through descriptions and charts? Hello, HR and people leaders. Are you not exhausted from the endless war for talent battle cries? I think it's time for a fresh approach. Which is why at JGA Recruitment, we understand the real challenges you face in sourcing top HR talent. And guess what? We believe we have the solution. Our team is on a mission to revolutionize your hiring process because we're not just recruiters. We're strategic partners dedicated to finding the best HR and people professionals who align perfectly with your company's vision and goals. Let's break the cycle of frustration together. Join forces with JGA Recruitment and experience the difference in hiring better talent faster. Don't let another day go by without taking action. Contact us today by visiting jgarecruitment.com to discover how we can transform your HR team. And here's a bonus. When you visit us, why not sign up for our weekly HR newsletter? Because it's packed with invaluable industry insights and more. We really hope you can revolutionize your HR department by working with JGA Recruitment. Contact us today.
Yeah, such a great question and so important. Over the years, I've learned that you really just have to build a relationship with them and make sure that they're listening. And the only way you can make sure they're listening is really by that first group of candidates that you get, and you can kind of tell, okay, well, did they hit the mark or not? And then go back over and over again and just keep, help me, let me form what this role looks like. And again, that's why the charter is more important than the job description, because I'm looking for a particular type of fit in this organization, and the talent acquisition specialist needs to hear the type of fit that I'm looking. I will check all the technical skills. I can check all those boxes as the subject matter expert. I need you to find the person that's going to fit in the organization. And each organization, like I said earlier, is different. It's going to be a different nuance, and just trying to build that into the role charter of, again, how does payroll need to show up in this organization? If our organization is suffering from transformation overload, right, then I'm going to look for a candidate with a different skin than maybe a candidate, meaning that thickness of skin, than a candidate fresh out of college, wanting to have that entry level position into payroll because they've heard payroll is you need a jack of all trades. I hope I'm answering your question. The way I do it is I spend time. I want to spend time with that talent, that recruiter or that talent acquisition specialist, and make sure that they're hearing me. And when you click and you see that person finally get what you're looking for, you start to see a different set of candidates. You're not getting just the resumes coming in or the CVs coming in from the word cloud or the algorithms or whatever. You're starting to see the people behind the paper. Does that make sense? And
it absolutely makes sense.
That was my first.
I think what I love.
Yes. So my very first experience in hiring, that really, I worked with an agency back in the day, and I had one person in the agency that I really clicked with, and she always found the people that I was looking for my organization. And I learned really in the beginning and we would have lunch on a quarterly basis to just check in. Right. And I learned that building that network and that relationship was really important for people, because when they did find a candidate that they thought, oh, they'd be a really good fit for Debbie's organization, she would always keep me in mind. And so building a relationship with recruiters is important. Sorry.
No, I fully agree. I think if we talk about it from an internal point of view, I think it really highlights the importance of that collaboration piece, that bridge you mentioned earlier on, right? And it's not limited just to building bridges with HR and finance. We need to be building bridges if you work in payroll with talent acquisition, with IT as well, and all the different departments. It'll help raise the profile of the profession, and it does that by raising understanding. Mm-hmm. And there's still a lot of misalignment and misunderstanding from those teams. And I know, because I work with lots of talent acquisition teams, and it's interesting. And I said, well, we've got this candidate, they've got payroll on the CV. I was like, that's not what Debbie needs. And it's not just because of the responsibilities, it's because of that cultural piece. Mm-hmm. I think you mentioned what was quite interesting earlier on in your response. You said this isn't about just finding people that mix with the values and mission statements of the organization. There are subcultures within every organization. Right. This is about finding someone, the role chart that's right for your team and your vision, that's going to really allow them to prosper when they come into your operation. And that is very different to just matching a value and behavior. There may be some synergy, but of course it's still a nuanced difference. I'd be crazy not to mention here, this is obviously where we come in as an external agency. We specialize in payroll recruitment. Hopefully, you mentioned the word time, I think 3 or 4 times there. It's not that talent acquisition can't find people. I've never stated that. They're very good at what they do. They have a very challenging role managing multiple positions and multiple stakeholders. But if you haven't got the time to work through that educational piece, that's where we can be really valuable, because hopefully we already have a head start on understanding the nuances of payroll, the technical requirements, and what it takes to be really successful in this industry. And we have access to the network. So we're not starting from nowhere going, where do I even look for payroll people? We kind of already know. But anyway, shameful plug there for JJ Recruitment. But I think it's relevant to the conversation.
I'd also add, and I'm not trying to make a shameful plug, but I do think that there's a value in for candidates, for payroll professionals, to really be connected with folks like you, because you do this differently, right? You do this differently than LinkedIn and other ways that candidates find jobs, right? Or find open roles. Payroll is a specialist function, and they're a very unique set of people that really need a unique recruiter, right? Or a talent agency. The Robert Halfs and the accounting firms of the world do not serve payroll candidates, right? The type that I'm looking for in my organizations, and neither do HR agencies, right? We are a niche role. And I think that, the GPA and the payroll org, we've been doing that for, 20, 30 years, trying to explain that this is a different role. This is not your typical accountant. And someday the benchmarking surveys will reflect that, and all of the other surveys will start reflecting that we are not payroll clerks anymore. We haven't been for 20.
Absolutely right. No, and you mentioned GPA. I mean, that's headed up by Mel Pizzey. Funnily enough, I started my career working alongside Mel in a totally different business. We know each other very well. And what I loved is the work that she's been doing. And she's been really pushing and to try and get payroll recognized as an industry on platforms like LinkedIn. Because actually, if you do work in talent acquisition or HR and you're trying to find these people, you're doing it by keyword search, and it's very limiting in what you can get back. And it's about time that big behemoths like LinkedIn did recognize payroll as its own industry. There's enough people working specifically in niche payroll positions to warrant it, who are adding huge amounts of revenue to all the different governments across the world and keeping people paid. It's about time people woke up. Maybe that's a separate podcast for another time.
Right.
But you referenced GPA, and they're doing some great work, as our payroll org, of course.
Yeah. And if you're interested in payroll as a career, payroll is a career. And you can, hashtag payroll as a career on LinkedIn, and you will get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people willing to help you and mentor you. GPA has a mentorship program, Payroll Org does. So these are the things we need to do to keep talking about payroll as a career and payroll as a separate industry, and that it is really a niche market, which, again, back to why is a role charter so important? Because it's describing something more than just the job description. It's describing a role within an organization versus a transactional event that I need. I need somebody to handle these transactions, right?
And I think it's an opportunity for anyone listening to this who's in a hiring position to raise the profile of your department, raise the profile of internally in particular, for anyone you're liaising with, of what payroll's really about. Because it's, as you say, it's no longer just transactional. Maybe it was years ago. It's certainly not anymore. And the role charter gives you an opportunity to publicize that internally and externally. And I think that's really, really important. If everyone suddenly started doing this, you'd be amazed at, I think, how quick people start to take payroll seriously and start to appreciate the strategic, value that it adds to an organization. I think that's really important. What I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, Debbie, is I'm going to highlight, if we split this into two like we have on the article, I thought it'd be really useful for our audience for me to highlight some of the key things I would say you'd find in a job description. And these are things I see every day. And I'm going to come back to you, and perhaps you can highlight the key things that people might find in a role charter. How does that sound?
Okay.
Fabulous. So I would argue, and there might be some things missing, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but I would say a job description should include the role purpose. And that's kind of a concise statement that defines the primary objectives and function of the job. Nowhere near as detailed as the role charter that Deborah will talk about in a moment, but it should give you a little bit of a purpose of why you need the person. Of course, it should be the job title. We need to know what that title is and the department it reports into. Not everyone reports directly into payroll, depending on the size of your organization, but something along the lines of payroll administrator within the payroll department can often be helpful. The scope of work. So this is the daily tasks and the key responsibilities that could incorporate specific examples. So, we mentioned earlier processing payroll for 500 employees on a lunar basis, maybe using particular types of software, any particular regulations you may need to adhere to. The specific technical details you need for that individual. If you've got a French payroll for 30 employees, this is where you put it. Experience in being able to process French payroll for 30 employees would be used to having a job description. The compensation is useful. So people know what they're applying for. I have a massive bugbear, and it is a personal thing, but lots of agencies out there and organizations will advertise positions without any compensation details or remuneration details whatsoever. For me, I think it's misleading, and it can be really time-consuming and frustrating. If you're a candidate applying for a job that doesn't meet your expectations, it's a waste of everybody's time. So if you can just put that out there, I can assure you, you'll get a better response, a more engaged response, and it wastes less people's time. I know it's risky, and people think, I don't want to put the salary detail out there. With pay transparency coming in anyway, this is an opportunity to get ahead of the curve. Be seen to be transparent. You'll get a better application level through, and you'll be more relevant to what you're doing. So that's something you can either put financial benefits, bonus structures in there as well. Skill requirements. This is the technical skills, sometimes the soft and interpersonal skills. That will often go into a job description, as will performance expectations. And these are softly led, so not as detailed as a role charter, but something like we're looking for someone who has a good attention to detail, someone who's able to respond efficiently, who has good verbal or written skills, things like that. Compliance and confidentiality. There might be some legal compliance standards that you might need to put in there, especially concerning sort of sensitive employee data. So that's kind of a responsibility to make sure you keep things confidential. And then after that, I think just technical proficiency, really. You might need a specific payroll system. There are many platforms out there. Some organizations don't have the time to train. They might need that skill in advance, or they might say that this is the system that we're using. They might say things like we need a certain level of Excel competency or Word competency, or the ability to deal with data analysis or handle potential issues. I would say they're kind of the key things we need in a job description. It's a process to guide people on what their daily tasks might be. So in a technical competence to be able to do the job. We've put in our article, it's kind of the lifeboat part of the equation, right? You need the boat before you need the navigation tool. There's no point navigating somewhere if you haven't got the ship. This is the ship. This is the bit we need to be in, but we don't know where we're going yet. And I think that's where I'm going to hand over to you. And what are the key things we should expect to find in a role charter?
Exactly. So what I think of is, first of all, how do I show up? Am I an individual contributor here, or am I part of a team? Am I part of a global team? Am I part of a local team or a regional team? Am I responsible for multiple countries? What countries are those? Because knowing the countries that you're responsible for also there's that next level of, well, if I'm responsible for Latin America, then I'm probably going to be doing a little bit more benefits administration with my payroll role than I might be doing if I were in the United States, right? So I think about the scope of the role, the flavor of the role, the regional aspect. I think about what types of compliance aspects am I going to necessarily see in that scope, right? Am I going to be thinking about languages? Am I going to be thinking about, social insurance versus, different types of taxes? Some of that scope of the role tells you a little bit more deeply how what I need to prepare for. What kind of jacket do I need to wear? What kind of, hat do I wear? Do I, wear a rain hat, or do I just wear a sun hat, type of thing? So, but yeah, specifically, that's really what I try to focus on in that role charter is that, the individual contributor or a team, what type of team, what type of borders. Am I working with lots of cross-border workers? Am I working with equity? What am I working with? Public company, private company? What types of transactions might I see that will show me how I need to show up here, and whether or not I would be a fit? Not because of my technical ability, because of, is this the flavor of the role that I want to work in? Some folks
Yeah, I love.
really, yeah, some folks really just, they don't want all that variety. They just want to come in and they want to be really like focused on the transactional, day to day, just get it done. They don't, but some really need that extra flavor and that extra insight in the charter.
Yeah, I love that. Is this the flavor of I love that. Is this the flavor I'm looking for? I think that's really important. As we're talking about here, we can take it another level as well. So, as you said, we may be dealing with these vendors and these countries, but also we can take it even further and say, look, right now we've got 30 countries that we're dealing with. But part of my vision is within 1 year, we might have 50. I need someone who's got the scope and the ability to take on more. Like, how do you handle that? That wouldn't be in a job description because it's not relevant yet.
Exactly.
So a role
Exactly.
charter brings that
Yeah.
bit to
Yeah.
life.
Exactly.
You mentioned mentoring earlier, and there's a great coaching phrase which I like to use when I'm working with my coaching clients, because I help with mentoring and coaching as well. And one of these, vision drives decision. And by being able to see what a role charter does, it creates that vision. It creates that vision for people to be able to decide, is this the company I want to work for? People don't want to be changing employers every 5 minutes. They're looking for some stability. And funnily enough, employers are looking for the same thing. They want to find the right person that can be with them on the journey for the long haul. We're not looking to get on and jump off at the first cruise stop, right? We want to stay on for the whole journey. And I think if we get that bit right, retention goes through the roof. It means you only need to recruit once. So yes, sometimes work with an agency might seem like it's more expensive. But if it saves you time and you have to recruit less because you get the right person first time, I mean, this allows you to build a vision. It allows you to build a department that really can have huge impact on organizational results and organizational performance. So, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else we've missed here, Debbie, or anything else you'd like to bring to the table following our article and following, to help people, help guide people on this journey.
Yeah, and I think overall it's just to be mindful that don't use a role charter as a job description, and don't use a job description as a role charter. Don't, they are two separate and distinct vehicles to get the right talent in your organization. And I have found role charters to be a little bit more job description-y, and haven't really been vetted, right? Like, yes, this is the flavor of the organization, but really, is it the flavor of the organization? And is it and that's where the rubber meets the road is when you're looking for a role or a new job, ask for a charter, ask for something more than a job description. Ask your recruiter for the role charter. Give me more than just this detail. So anyway, that's all I would say, is that they are two distinct and separate things. I think we said that, but I just wanted to be sure.
No, it's a fantastic point, and I think it's worth reiterating. There's a way to think about this. Think about it in terms of an employee value proposition or an EVP. There's nothing in a job description you'd ever dream of putting in an EVP. So if you're writing your role charter, often your role charter information can live inside an EVP if it's specific to a role. And that's kind of where you make the distinction. You think, well, if would I put it in my EVP? You wouldn't. If you wouldn't, then it lives in job description. If you would, that's more the vision side, what we're trying to achieve. Then it's probably on the role charter side. And that might just help people make that distinction in their minds. And you're absolutely right. Keep them separate. 100%, because otherwise it just gets confusing, and people need to see with two different eyes here. We've got the technical skills, and then we've got the cultural nuance that goes around the vision side of things, which is really, really important. Debbie, what a fantastic conversation. I can't wait for this article to go live. It may be out there already when we release this, but thank you for joining me on today's show of the Payroll Podcast. I am going to take the opportunity to open the vault, so I'm going to ask you 3 short, sharp questions, and let's see where it goes. I haven't prepared you for this, hence the R, but this will be fun. I'll keep it nice and easy. So, first question: drawing from your extensive global payroll career, what's one piece of timeless advice you'd offer to someone working in payroll right now?
Oh gosh, really understand your role. Really understand where your guardrails are in payroll, and just understand your role. What's the purpose of payroll in your organization? Because that's really going to be key to your success. every organization is going to look at payroll differently. And it's really important that you get that.
Absolutely right. Love that. Number 2, looking ahead, what makes you really excited about the future of payroll?
I know this is probably what everyone is saying these days, but it's really technology. It is really, there is so much opportunity to really improve how we're doing our jobs in organizations. And it's just, the technology is amazing.
Yeah, I can't deny it's the thing that I get most excited about as well. The idea of getting to touchless payroll so we can really focus on strategy. I think that's for me anyway. That's what I'm excited about seeing in this world.
It's the first time. It's the concept of first time right. I mean, with technology, we can really make a difference in getting to that first time right payroll. Hire to retire, first time right through our technology.
There you go. Yep. Nailed it. And a bit of fun for you. So if the payroll industry was a book, a song, or a film, what book, what song, or what film would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. That's a really tough one. A book, a song, or wow. I'm looking at.
If it helps, I went for Bohemian Rhapsody as a song because I think it's mad, but it's, if you've never heard it before, you never quite know where it's going. It's a bit of fun, but it's also highly technical.
Right, it is.
I had loads of things as to why I thought Bohemian Rhapsody was good. So that would be my response.
Yeah, that is a good one because it's operatic, it's rock and roll, it's got just all the nuances, right? I think of Wagner as a composer. I think of maybe The Ring might be something that I would compare payroll to because it's just so rich, so filled with, there's history. You have to understand where you've been to know where you're going with payroll. I would say it would be Wagner's Ring Cycle.
I love that. For not having an answer to having such a deep response in the end, Debbie. It was worth waiting for. Okay. What an excellent response. It's been an absolute pleasure having you today on the Payroll Podcast. The first time I've had you on the show. I know we've been trying to get this arranged for a while, so I'm delighted we've managed to make it happen.
Thank you.
I extend my deepest gratitude for joining me, and thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for helping me write the article for Payroll Org. I hope everyone goes and reads it. I will put a link in the show notes. I think most importantly, hopefully the insights today is going to help everyone have a transformative view of what a good job description and what a role charter looks like to really support positive global payroll talent acquisition, because it is complex and payroll talent is in short supply. I know it's what we do, and we want to make sure we get this right. More importantly, of course, if you are looking for a payroll agency to support you on your journey, we do now have operations in the US. We're known as JGA Recruitment Inc. So you can find us there. I'll put a link in the show notes, or in the UK as well. We'd love to support you. We'd love to show you what a good payroll recruitment experience can feel like. So please do get in touch with either myself or my team. And of course, stay tuned to the Payroll Podcast for the latest insights. And if you love the show, please review it on your favorite podcast platform. Share it with all of your payroll colleagues and friends. And I'll look forward to bringing you the next episode really, really soon. Deborah, thank you ever so much.
Thank you
for joining me today. It's been my absolute pleasure.
Mine too. Thank you so much, Nick.
Today's episode of the Payroll Podcast has been sponsored by Deel, the all-in-one global people platform that simplifies how you pay your global teams. Deel's fully managed global payroll makes it possible to pay your entire team in over 100 countries and in over 200 currencies, all in one place. So whether you're an enterprise business, a small company, or something in between, Deel is built to meet your unique business needs. With in-house customer success managers, local payroll experts, dedicated points of contact, and more, Deel's fully managed global payroll eliminates third-party handovers and it provides unmatched compliance and flexibility. In fact, they'll even help you track and flag the latest changes to payroll regulations before they even become an issue. And with 24/7 monitoring and best-in-class security protocols, your sensitive data is always protected. So are you ready to transform your global payroll system? If you are, click the link in the show notes and book your demo with Deel today.